Hello, hello. Happy Thursday. Today I want to talk to you about one hormone that you cannot survive without. Now, when I say hormone, I'm willing to bet that your immediate thought is estrogen, progesterone. Am I right? Maybe for some of y'all, because I know several of you in this group have thyroid issues, you think of thyroid hormones. But there's actually one hormone that we cannot survive without. And when I say survive, I mean running from a bear, a lion, helping your second grader do Common Core math, getting through a toddler's tantrum. But I also literally mean survive, as in stay alive in the day to day. Simply put, without this hormone, you would die. So, what is this hormone and why is it so important that we can't survive without it? Well, I'm sure you may have guessed at this point, but it's cortisol. Hi, I'm Jeannie Clun, certified nutrition consultant and founder and creator of Nutrition Genie and the Calm and Balanced Mama Method. And I'm here to help you find freedom from your overwhelm, irritability, anxiety, and fatigue by supporting your adrenal glands and bringing your body out of chronic fight, flight, or freeze mode so that you can get back to being the woman who can do it all with ease and finally feel happy in your life. And to do that, we have to address cortisol. So, cortisol is a hormone made in the adrenal glands as a part of our hypothalamic pituitary adrenal, also known as the HPA axis. And most people associate cortisol with its role in the stress response. But in our modern lives, most of our stress isn't actually physical. We don't actually need to fight or flee. Most of our stress is actually mental or emotional or physical. But when I say physical, I mean it in the sense of something like nutrient deficiency, pregnancy, breastfeeding, bacterial imbalance, inadequate caloric intake, overexercise, inflammation, or something like that. I don't mean a bear in the woods. So, what's supposed to happen with healthy functioning adrenal glands is that it's supposed to release cortisol in the morning. And this cortisol goes up to a peak within about the first 30 minutes of you waking to get you up and going and to reduce any inflammation that may have accrued within your body overnight. And in a healthy cortisol pattern, this is what allows us to get up and get going without the need for coffee or sugary foods to give us that like instant energy boost, right? So we're not dragging all morning long. And this natural spike is called a cortisol awakening response, or CAR for short. So once cortisol reaches this CAR, this peak, what it does is it gradually then falls throughout the day until bedtime, where you want it to be low so that you can sleep. And this is really, really important that we have low cortisol at night because cortisol is very active in the body, which we'll go over in just a minute. So, in order for us to rest and to repair and to replete, what we really need is for our cortisol levels to be low during the night so that our body can do that. We can't do that when we're in an active state, right? But what I actually see in a lot of my clients when we first start working together is that they'll be exhausted all day long, like counting down the minutes until bedtime. But then when night hits, they are wired. They're unable to sleep. Their mind is racing, right? Or they'll go to sleep just fine, but then they will jolt awake around 1 to 3, maybe 4 a.m. And oftentimes, this is because of an imbalance in our cortisol pattern, where it's not actually bottoming out at night the way it's supposed to. And because cortisol is too high during that time and cortisol is active, it's waking us up. It's shooting us up out of our sleep. Now, cortisol, as I just pointed out, is a very important hormone. So the flip side of that is that when we have an imbalance in our natural rhythm of cortisol, it can actually have some really detrimental effects across our body. And this is because cortisol actually does a whole lot more than just regulate our stress response, as you just heard a little bit about. Cortisol actually is something that I call a master hormone, right? She is the queen bee. Probably not unlike many of you in here, she wears a lot of hats. She juggles a lot of balls. And without her, there are a lot of other hormones and a lot of other functions in the body that just cannot work properly. Okay? So, what does that look like? What this looks like is cortisol, first and foremost, is released during times of stress to get your body a necessary energy boost to better handle what it perceives as an emergency situation. And the way that it does that is by increasing glucose in the body because you're stressed, right? So if you're stressed, your brain needs more glucose, which is what our body uses as fuel, as energy, to think through. Hi, I'll be right down, okay? Okay. So your body needs in 3 minutes. Okay. So your body needs, okay, yes, more glucose to think through, how do I handle this situation? How do I handle the fact that my 6-year-old just popped into my Facebook Live, right? And your muscles need more glucose to fight, run, punch, kick, okay? But what this means is that your body then has to come in with another hormone called insulin. And what insulin does is it takes that glucose to where it needs to go, whether that is to the brain to help you think through the stress, to your muscles to flee, wherever the demand for your body may be. But we cannot control how much insulin is released. And so what happens is oftentimes this can be a really clunky process because our body is just trying to get energy to our cells. And so what can happen is it can move too much glucose out of our bloodstream too quickly, and then we crash. We're left with no energy and we have to take an afternoon nap. So let me know if you can relate to high and low energy levels that you can't control. Maybe 1 minute you want to organize the whole house, and the next you just can't even muster up the thought of making dinner. Let me know in the comments with a 1 if you can relate to that. So on that same note, when this response happens, we can actually end up craving sweets and sugar because our body is asking for more of that glucose that insulin just swept away, right? And so a lot of women with cortisol imbalance will experience cravings for sweet and sugary foods so that their body can actually get that immediate energy, right? And I just want to tell you guys, this is not a willpower thing. I hear this so often from women, but it's this cortisol insulin relationship that also causes us to store body fat. And so a lot of women who are struggling with stubborn weight, they think it's just because they're not strong enough, right? They don't have enough willpower to stick to some restrictive diet to stay away from the sweets, but it is not that. This is actually the mechanism of your body trying to get more glucose because of its response to a spike in cortisol. And this process can inherently be really inflammatory, which to your body in itself is really, really stressful, okay? So then what happens is when we have this inflammatory response, well, that then increases cortisol, which then increases your blood sugar, which then increases insulin, until it becomes this really vicious cycle that I call the positive cortisol feedback loop. And that's why a lot of women they'll try something to address their symptoms only to find out that, okay, I'm plugging along, I'm doing okay. Oh crap, this stressful situation or this problem cropped up, and then they're just back down to square one again, and they're struggling with all of the same symptoms again, right? It's because of this positive cortisol feedback loop. And until you can actually break that loop, what's happening is you are continually ramping up these other hormones that can actually trigger things like anxiety and irritability and impatience that then in and of themselves create another stress response that tells your body you're in danger, okay? So if we were to sort of continue down cortisol's resume of what do I do, right? What are these other functions and responsibility? We'd see it playing a role in your metabolism because of its relationship with thyroid. We'd see it serving as your body's main anti-inflammatory compound, which, if we go back to what I just described, inflammation induces cortisol, and this is why. Cortisol also impacts hunger cravings and nutrient absorption because too much cortisol actually shuts down your digestion, because if you're in an actual survival situation, which remember, our body doesn't know the difference in a true threat and worrying about what's for dinner, right? So if your body perceives this threat, it doesn't need to digest food. It just doesn't. It's not critical. It's not going to help you survive. So that is what it's doing. So it shuts down your digestion because it needs to focus all of its resources on fighting or fleeing, right? Cortisol also helps control your sleep-wake cycle because it is counter to our sleep hormone melatonin. It helps prevent low libido and menstrual irregularities because of its relationship with your sex hormones. We have backup sex hormones made in our adrenal glands. So I know most of you aren't in perimenopause age, definitely not in menopause age, but once we go through menopause as women, our adrenal glands actually make back up sex hormones when our ovaries are no longer making them. So it is so critical, even looking into the future, if you want to have a healthy, easy perimenopause, menopause, to have healthy adrenals, right? And then, of course, what everybody knows it for, its role in our ability to cope with stress. So with all of these responsibilities of cortisol, when I talk to women and they tell me, you know, I told my doctor what I'm going through, I told him or her, I'm exhausted, I'm completely overwhelmed, I'm always yelling, I feel like I can't handle anything, I can't focus anymore, I can't remember things very well, always forgetting stuff, and I have really bad brain fog, right? Can't lose weight no matter what I do. We just talked about that. I crave sweets and alcohol and caffeine and salt. Again, this is your body looking for that glucose in response to the cortisol. And oh, by the way, my period is wonky. What is going on with my period? And these women, you go to your doctor with these concerns, and what happens, right? One of two things. You're told it's normal, or you're handed a prescription that you don't want to take for an antidepressant or an anti-anxiety medication or even a birth control, right? And then we are left to wonder, why don't these things work? This is what our doctor told us, right? This is why when these other things crop up, or you have to keep switching brands or increasing the dose, right? Because these things, they are only addressing the symptoms. They're trying to bring up your mood or regulate your period or regulate your digestion, right? But they're never addressing that master hormone, cortisol, that's really running the show for everything else. So if you are experiencing any of the symptoms that I've described today, what I want you to understand is that this is a physiological, a biological thing, right? You have to address your biology in order to fix these symptoms. Otherwise, you're going to continue to progress into further stages of cortisol imbalance. You're going to further tax your adrenal glands, right? This is only going to continue getting worse, and your symptoms are only going to continue getting louder, right? And the first step to address that is by breaking this positive cortisol feedback loop and getting your cortisol to follow a regular pattern so that your other hormones can start to do what they need to do. And so that you can support those other hormones and the depletions that cortisol may have caused on those, okay? So I hope that that was helpful for you in understanding more about cortisol and its role in not only the stress response, but literally keeping you alive. So let me know in the comments what aha moments you had about cortisol, specifically in its role in the symptoms that you may be experiencing, or anything else that you learned today that you just didn't know. All right, everyone, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and here's to it being calm and balanced.